continue our path around branded entertainment here with a little view from our client DuPont. I apologize that Eric Parker, who was scheduled to be here, was unable to make it. We have several projects that we're working on with DuPont right now, one of which we'll be announcing very shortly in India with the Times of India, and Eric unfortunately had to tend to that piece of business. But what I'm going to share with you today is a program that we developed about 3.5 years ago for DuPont. The title for that program is that of Horizons. And really this is what I would say to be the anatomy of a branded entertainment program. Ogilvy Entertainment was established 7 years ago really to work closely with clients to understand their business needs. And as you heard for those of you that were in the room around the Coca-Cola's view of content, for us it all begins with the brand strategy, truly dimensionalizing and understanding what it is that that brand is trying to achieve, understanding how that brand is viewed by consumers. In the case of DuPont, it's not really a consumer-facing brand as much as it is a business-to-business brand. You know, believe it or not, business-to-business content is critical in terms of the selling process. You know, and from that, we're then able to develop a concept, develop a program that is not just about content, but is about the ways in which that content is brought to life through physical events, through digital platforms, through thought leadership pieces, and distributed across multiple channels with partners, whether it be broadcast partners, digital partners, or print partners. I'm going to take you through the results, and then we'll talk a little bit about season 2 and answer any questions that you may have around the program. So for DuPont, they were very much oriented around 3 fundamental, what they called megatrends, that of food, that of energy, and that of protection and safety. And even more importantly, what they identified was an insight that those 3, if you will, pillars of our planet are under fire right now with 7 billion people living on this earth. So in developing that insight, which was created or identified by our planners within Ogilvy, what the creative team came up with is this idea of a collaboratory. And collaboratory is defined as a center without walls in which researchers can perform the research without regard to physical location. And DuPont really felt that at the core of that organization is science. I'm sure if I asked the audience here, tell me some products that DuPont makes, if you're not familiar with the brands or the patented product, it would be very hard for you to say, well, they make Kevlar, which obviously somebody doesn't go out and just buy Kevlar. You find it in bulletproof vests, and you find it in football helmets, and you find it in other objects that are used for protection, or Tyvek, which is used to insulate one's home, as well as in those protectionary suits from a hazmat standpoint. So what we identified with this collaboratory is how does DuPont, who is not a big consumer marketer, go out there and really tell their story in an innovative way and put forward this thought leadership positioning to their partners as well as to their potential customers to address these global challenges. So really the strategy was, what we wanted to do is partner or align with a global broadcaster. The insight that we got from DuPont was although North America is a large market for them, it very much was about developing nations. It was about Brazil, Russia, India, China, really focusing on the BRIC and how to take advantage of the BRIC. And what they were looking for was a broadcast partner that was going to give them authenticity and credibility on a global scale. So the program that we developed is this idea called the Horizons Project. It was born by the agency. We developed it initially as really a view forward over the next 10 years who were the companies, the countries, the industries that were going to advance these components, energy, food, and protection and safety, advance us as a society. We took that idea out to several broadcasters, the likes of CNN, BBC, CNBC. We had great receptivity from broadcasters, and really a development process emerged where we sat with, in the case of the BBC, their commissioner and their creative development team, and began to further refine the idea to where it felt as if it was being born from the BBC's programming itself. It wasn't a sponsored program per se. It certainly was not a time buy on behalf of our client where we were just using the air and placing our message. We wanted it to be truly authentic. And in dimensionalizing it, what they were able to do is bring forward their talent, which you'll see in a second. They were able to bring forward production companies that we were interested in working with, of which we selected 2 productions out of London to work with us very closely on the mini doc component, which we'll talk about, and really create something that was authentic to the brand in terms of its position, but more importantly, relative to the audience engaging with or viewing the content, felt like it was coming from the BBC itself. So this is a little case study on Horizons. It gives you an overview on the program itself, and then we'll do a little deeper dive into the components of how the program itself was structured and what it was really built off of.
In 2011, the Earth's population swelled to 7 billion. And our beautiful, complicated world began to show signs of strain. DuPont reorganized their entire business around the big questions we were all asking. How will we feed all of these hungry mouths? How will we end our addiction to fossil fuels? How will we protect people and our environment? They established a global collaboratory and invited the world to help them find some answers by using entertainment to start a conversation. The result was the Horizons project. To begin the discussion, we created a custom TV show. The first season of 20 half-hour episodes was broadcast to a global audience of 450 million households via BBC World News and through syndication deals with Bloomberg and a host of airlines.
Hello, I'm Adam Shaw, and I'm on a journey right across the world, meeting the people and companies, finding the major business solutions to the challenges facing us all over the next 10 years. The UN believes that by the year 2020, the global population will have increased by 10%. In this program, we'll be meeting the people who have found solutions to those problems. Welcome to Hong Kong.
The TV show was supported by 14 short documentary films that showcased real-world collaborations with cinematic style. These 2-minute case studies appeared in the Commercial Time, the heart of every show, and also lived online, where they garnered 2 million views in under 2 months.
Siempre que cae cuando yo andaba en mi hace un minuto parece que está haciendo tan frío. A ver, me lo gobierno internet y yo quiero ponerme un miedo. Yo pensé que
el paneles de polímeros ayuda a aislar y tener una resistencia mecánica más fuerte.
DuPont and the BBC also held 2 international summits that were designed to help key decision makers face up to the big challenges around food and protection. The whole Horizons project was supported by a digital strategy to keep the conversation flowing. A comprehensive website, live web chats, Facebook and Twitter allowed a flood of feedback. And soon the rest of the world's media began to join in, with over 250 media mentions, industry coverage, and popular endorsement.
DuPont is a business that's constantly reinventing itself. And that's why DuPont is buy.
To put this in perspective, in the time it's taken to watch this film, the Horizons project would have reached almost 2,000 people. That's 770 people a minute, proving there's genuine human interest in tackling the challenges that face us all in the next decade.
So, as the case study mentioned, it was really for us a multi-platform approach. And when we look at branded content or brand-funded entertainment, we as an agency are not just looking at the content piece, the moving image. What we're really looking at is how does the program itself provide a platform for the brand that extends into digital, that really it touches the customer through events, and more importantly, can permeate across their sales channels. So whether it be a consumer packaged goods company like Unilever that we work with, how is that driving down to the retail level, or in the case of DuPont at a B2B level, how is it driving up into thought leadership and decision makers at a government level? And really, I think that that's the, if you will, the sweet spot of these types of programs, right? Because it's a significant investment that's being made, both in terms of money and of time. And for a brand, they really need to understand how these projects are not just one-off pieces of content, but are really built as franchises that run across all of your different marketing tactics. The Broadcast Horizons TV series, as was mentioned, it was 20 episodes, hosted by Adam Shaw, who is BBC World News' premier business correspondent. And in essence, the first season, it was the #2 viewed show on BBC World News, really next to their World News Hour. So BBC was very happy with the show. They renewed it for season 2, which we'll take you through a little bit about what season 2 is about. And we are about to announce season 3. So, you know, for a show like this, with a global broadcaster like BBC to go into a 3rd season, despite the economics and support of the brand, it says a lot about the quality of the content and the viewership. This is just an example or sample of some of the TV series episodes. And what we did in constructing this, again, very closely with the BBC's development team, is we looked at it from a topic perspective across the 3, if you will, mega trends that I mentioned earlier, and then from a global perspective in terms of the key business areas for DuPont, as well as the audience sector. So we did overlay different information related to who our audience was and where the BBC was strong in specific markets to truly understand the stories we were going to tell, whether it was waste management in Denmark or satellite technology in England or wind power in the US. And you can see relative to our continental coverage, outside of Antarctica, I believe we pretty much covered the globe in terms of stories. Broadcast-wise, really what the driving force for us was the reach of the BBC. Per this chart, you can see that we supplemented the U.S. and parts of Europe with Bloomberg as well, with a second window. And our season 1 filming locations, USA, Brazil, China concentrate. What we felt was important in terms of constructing this program, both for the BBC relative to Ofcom and the scrutiny that the BBC undergoes based on how they are funded within the UK, as well as for DuPont. We felt that it was very important to have a panel of experts that really came together to discuss these topics. So whether it be the CEO of United Bank of Africa, or an economics professor from the London School of Economics, somebody from a policy institute in China. Again, looking at what the megatrends were, what the topics were, where we were reaching out to, and bringing together these individuals that could really inform the agenda and the content that we were putting forward relative to the stories. The stories of inclusive innovation, aside from what the BBC produced, we went out there, this says 13, we wound up producing an additional one, 14. We created 14 short documentary stories. Now, the way that these films were used, first and foremost, were within 2-minute vignettes in the broadcast on the BBC. So rather than running traditional 30-second or 60-second spots, what we did is we augmented the stories that we were telling based on the topics on the BBC with a 2-minute story of inclusive innovation, which was more DuPont's point of view with one of their partners. What you saw in one of those films was their partnership with Tata Steel in India and the work that they did in India. And aside from these films being used there and in a digital platform, the films began to be used by their salespeople in field. So when an individual is sitting down with another steel company or a government agency such as the Brazilian government with the police department there around their use of Kevlar vests and an initiative that DuPont undertook to drive the cost of Kevlar vests down in Brazil, allowing the police in Brazil, all the police in Brazil, to be equipped with Kevlar, just based on the expensive manufacturing process that we experience in the U.S. All of those stories were brought to life in short form docs. Those docs are also available on demand in a first-class cabin of several airlines as part of the distribution platform there, and are used within trade shows and other industry events. So again, a lot of application for content being used cross-discipline and cross-channel for the brand. The ways, stories of inclusive innovation, the shows itself, this just gives you a time clock as to how the bumpers were broken up and the 2-minute mini doc. And now I'm going to show you 2 of those mini docs. The first is that of Vietnam, Salt of the Earth.
Gia đình tôi là hồi trước giờ tôi biết là ông nội ông tốt, ông tới ông già rồi cũng tới giờ luôn á.
Nó làm thì chăm chỉ mình cũng giỏi thế dáng lắm thì mình người nông dân mình gặp thì mình vậy đó chứ.
Đối với đồng bằng sông Cửu Long, cái mô hình mà tốt nhất cho nông dân mà áp dụng ở đây đó thì là trong cái mùa mưa đó thì bà con nông dân trồng lúa thì nó là tốt nhất. Sau đó thì tới mùa khô thì bà con nông dân nuôi tôm. Khi mà bơm nước vào nuôi tôm đó thì cái nước mặn này nó vào ở trong ruộng, và như vậy đó thì nó sẽ làm cho đất bị mặn đi, natri ở trong đất.
Là cái lúc mà nuôi tôm thất rồi làm ruộng thất thì cũng lo lắng buồn lắm, không có để làm được có nhiều.
Bên lúc này là cây lúa có tính thích nghi được với cái vùng đất này, ngoài ra cái khả năng mà thích hợp với điều kiện mặn, cho nên cái nền đất nuôi tôm để lại theo thống kê thì tăng lên từ 15 đến 20%, cá biệt có thể lên đến là 30%.
Việt Nam là nước đứng thứ 2 trên thế giới về mặt xuất khẩu gạo. Mình tăng được cái sản lượng lúa thì chắc chắn là mình có một cái hướng để mà giải quyết cái vấn đề an ninh lương thực.
Chúng luôn, mình mừng quá, mình thấy ra làm tìm được giống lúa này mình quá, mình biết tiền ở trên nhà, chứ nó không trúng là mình có tiền trên nhà.
Cho sau này mình lo con mình cho nó được ăn học, được tới nơi tới chốn, khỏe khoắn trong lòng mình.
So the impact of that obviously is not for the family in terms of being able to provide food for their children, build a home, but really, as you saw, sustain food security. Right? There are major issues that we're facing. I know, with the rise of an inconvenient truth and sort of the green movement that took place, we started to really talk about the environment, and Hollywood and the industry has really embraced an understanding. But on the horizon, relative to water issues that we face, relative to water scarcity, food supply issues, and just overall shifts in terms of climate change as we're seeing take place in real time, there are some big challenges that we all face as a planet, and really what DuPont's trying to get at here is a communication of that, because it's very hard for us to watch a polar bear on an iceberg and say, well, how does that really affect me? And these are real world stories of people that are facing the same challenges that we may face one day. The next story here is down in Colombia. Again, personal stories, that really are about how DuPont is bringing solutions, to individuals in developing countries to really increase their quality of life, and then more importantly, those solutions are being pushed out on a global basis.
Yo me levanto a las 5, ahí viene papi Ordey, y a usted le hace queso. A mí me gusta que juegue con las vacas, y que de tan sencillo, no sé. Mi papá me ha contado que el queso lo hacen con el cuauce de vaca. A veces el queso salía sucio y se dañaba y no servía, tocaba botar. Perdió el trabajo y perdió la plata del queso.
En nuestra región hay mucha pobreza. la ineficiencia, podríamos decir, de nuestros pequeños productores por la falta de una tecnología adecuada para su producción, pues lo viene dejando en desventaja.
Que eso ahora se hace con coago que higiene. Yo no sé de qué será ese coago, pero ahora no se desperdicia así como antes.
El coagulante danisco DuPont es una enzima que es modificar la proteína de la leche para coagularla y obtener queso. Es un producto de alta calidad, fácil de manejar.
Uno le echa el coago, espera ahí unos 30 minutos, 40. Y cuando uno vaya, está coago así, parece mal. Yo ese sí no lo conocía, pero el Billy nos enseñó a usar de pastillitas.
Hacemos reuniones periódicas para entrenarnos sobre la mejor forma y más productiva de hacer el queso.
Porque está generando mayores ingresos y lógicamente que ha mejorado el nivel de vida.
Que le estoy dando de agradecido por todo lo que me das.
So, as I mentioned, we've done a whole host of stories, in Brazil, in Mexico, Chile, Indonesia. All of them are available on YouTube. I invite you to go view them. And we will continue to produce these stories of inclusive innovation as part of this program. We just received an order for another 14 short films across the different divisions at DuPont. The microsite itself was a companion site for the next season, very similar to the conversation that we were having with Neil. We're very much looking at how the microsites can really build out the content in more of an audio synced or companion standpoint. So if you're really interested in learning more about that cheese process coming off that 2-minute vignette, or you want to understand more information about the challenges that China is facing relative to energy with its population, based on that sync, you can go deeper on a tablet or a smartphone, look at the map itself and really understand the region and the people and what they're facing challenge-wise. We did 4 events over the past 2 years, attended by government officials, led by the presidents of the respective DuPont divisions in those countries. Very much again, a thought leadership opportunity to put forward DuPont's philosophy around this global collaboratory. And here, the one that was done in India, there were 101 guests, and it was opened up by Ellen Kuhlman, the CEO of DuPont, as well as a keynote address by the president of DuPont India. The events were supported by the Economic Times, the Hindustan Times, and the Hindu Business Times in India. So we're using local media as our partners as well to really cover the event and elevate the discussion that's taking place. BBC also covered it within their World News as a thought leadership event relative to the topic. Again, one on protection that we did in Istanbul. The program itself at the core, again, was, with the 4 elements around it, was supported through the TV vignettes, traditional marketing program, social media, paid media, a syndication strategy. IMG has been handling our international distribution outside of the BBC distribution, and then a very robust in-flight program that we're continuing to build out. Project extensions, this just takes you through how we used it across CorpCom, and then the results. So, from a research and measurement standpoint, first thing that we're trying to get at is this idea that people don't understand what DuPont does. And secondly, in our research, what we found is people associate DuPont with Agent Orange, which actually is Dow, not DuPont, but a little confusion because they're both D and they both have red logos. But more importantly, DuPont's history comes out of the, if you will, the explosives business and then into the chemical area. They have divested the chemical business entirely, haven't been in the explosive business for tens of years. So really it was about this shift of people's perception around the DuPont brand. You can see from here, from wave 1, wave 2, in terms of the way that we conducted our research. Wave 1, awareness average of 68% of respondents heard of DuPont. Wave 2, we had a 10% increase in terms of people having heard about DuPont. Consideration went up in wave 2, 5%. The recommendation actually was a 3% increase. Their net promoter score was a 13% point increase, and their reputation increased by 10 percentage points post-program. So when you start to have those kinds of moves off of media and the influence of a global platform like BBC, you start to really understand the results of the audience that you're reaching through that channel partner. This just gives you sort of a breakdown. 185 million reach on Horizons, 15% average increase in brand awareness, 20,000 Facebook likes. You saw a lot of these in the case study. Jim Cramer, obviously the impact that had on the stock price, and people just talking, telling us that they want to buy the episodes on DVD and that they found it to be very informative and a great job. Recognition, pretty much recognized across the ad world to date. Season 2, just a snapshot as to where we're taking season 2. The stories that we've already begun to produce, whether it be a story on Japan Airlines, Nippon in Japan, or a story on food in China. And then, as I mentioned, the announcement of season 3, which that press release will be coming out in the next few weeks. So with that, I am happy to entertain any questions, although not as exciting as our Coca-Cola client. Very much gets at the heart of what we see as an emerging trend in terms of B2B content and how this plays into the likes of whether it be your news platforms like CNN or BBC, or some of your more, I guess you could say, factual-based platforms like Discovery and Nat Geo out there. I think you're going to start to see a lot more thought leadership content being put out into the marketplace. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Did DuPont ask Ogilvy was it their idea? Was it Ogilvy's idea?
Yeah, so basically we were briefed from a traditional brief standpoint. And within that brief, it was actually it started out as we're looking to take some dollars out of some of our traditional sponsorships. How could we use those dollars better? We looked at over 200 sports leagues in terms of alignment, and then started to look at media partnerships. We developed 3 key ideas around media platforms. They really sparked to this. It actually got down to this, a sponsorship of Man U and another sports partnership. And when this was taken to the CMO felt that this was the right approach from a quote-unquote owned media perspective rather than renting somebody else's franchise. And then we went out to the media partners that I mentioned earlier, started really looking at their reach and what a partnership may look like, and the BBC emerged as the right partner. We had a fundamental idea for the program, but really the format itself was then crafted very closely with the BBC. Yeah. Yeah, which is the interesting thing about this space, right? Because whether it's coming directly off of a brand brief for an upcoming campaign, whether it's coming up from a shift of dollars because they're not going to renew an existing sponsorship, or whether it comes out of an existing partnership that's in place where they're just not leveraging the content coming off of that. I believe every brand has a story to tell. It's a question of whether I'm telling that story myself or whether someone else is going to come in and tell that story for me. We find that when there's true collaboration and when you can bring an idea like this to a traditional broadcaster or production company, not saying that we want to control the message by any means, but we're able to collaborate in a way in which we ensure that our key messaging, our partners, and our platform is coming to the forefront of the idea. Other questions? I hope I didn't put you all to sleep with this one. Okay, good. Yes, sir.
The BBC angle from a journalistic point of view, did they have any trepidation? Have you doing content for?
They had a lot of trepidation.
Any disclaimer from your?
Well, first off, the way that the show is presented, it's I believe it's Horizons. If you will, the logo comes up, and then it's it's either in association with or in partnership with DuPont. And there were a lot of, there were a lot of stipulations placed on, if you will, credits, right? There's not a DuPont executive that is credited with this program because of the separation between church and state, ad and edit. There is a stake in the series that DuPont maintains. So the series is not wholly owned by the BBC. That said, it is a passive stake. The BBC advises us as to what they're doing with the series and how the series could evolve. Both season 2 and season 3 were informed by us creatively, but they have final cut. As you can imagine, when we first entered into it, the commissioner was adamantly against the idea. The problem is that the landscape evolving, the cost of production going up, the challenge to garner the kind of audiences that networks need to garner to really justify, and the BBC's not ad-supported, but ad-supported, the economics of the industry is changing significantly. And I think what you're starting to see, and we did a lot of this work years ago with CNBC, working very closely with them in terms of their brand-based programming. You're starting to see more and more brands come in partnership, at least to seed the idea of what the topic should be around and to inform the idea. Because whether it's us facilitating the head of agriculture for the Chinese government, right, the Minister of Agriculture in China, or whether it be the BBC going through their traditional government channels, both of those are avenues to get that individual engaged in the content and on camera. And more times than not, what we found in these programs we've been doing for these B2B clients is that we both would have come to the table with very similar individuals that are the experts in these respective fields. It's just a matter of how that's being dimensionalized when these things are being developed. But it is a challenge, and there's no, the BBC's gone on to do another program that HSBC, I believe, brought to them around innovators, looking at sort of entrepreneurs. It's a hybrid of Iconoclast, more from a business perspective rather than a celebrity sports talent perspective. And that was born by J. Walter Thompson and HSBC and then brought to the BBC. So you're starting to see more of these models emerge, and I think it's a very interesting time. Yes, sir.
Two questions, actually. One, was DuPont seeded the project, obviously. So is it fair to say that DuPont had two roles in the project? One was, in essence, an investor or seeder of the project, and the other role was actually an advertiser of the project?
So from an advertising perspective, again, the BBC is not really, they're not a commercial network. I guess you could say it's sponsored programming from their view, and the vignette that was put in there was part of that programming block. To answer your first question, yes, DuPont not only developed the idea, they then funded the production of the series itself and then supported it with other marketing. So there were full-page ads that were taken out in the Financial Times and some other key print partners to create awareness around the series when the series launched. And it is a dual role, both in terms of production partner investment-wise and marketing support.
Now, my other question is, from your PowerPoint, at the beginning of the PowerPoint, where you talk about the drive on the part of DuPont to increase collaboration around the world, to make the world better, to highlight the collaborative efforts of DuPont itself. What was the chicken and what was the egg? Was the program devised as a means to get to the values that DuPont's about, or did DuPont have this value-centered approach in all of their business activities that in turn this was a tactic in their overall approach?
DuPont knew that it was moving its business towards a focus around food, energy, and protection. Several acquisitions were made around that in those, if you will, verticals. And then this was a platform to communicate that to the audiences that were critical to them to help understand it, whether it be Wall Street from an investor standpoint, government officials in terms of partnerships in those respective countries, or in the case of some other companies that utilize DuPont products in their product, bolstering that relationship from a preferred vendor or preferred partner standpoint. Okay, so with that, I'm out of time. I thank you all for attending and enjoy NATPE.